do you guys have any self-talk strategies, or have you guys found your own, what you tell yourself? Does that help you push through a tough workout or a tough set, or get you to the gym those times you don't feel like it? Or do you have, your athletes change their self-talk in a way that's more, I guess productive and beneficial, and yeah, anything about self-talk, I guess, that comes up?
With my athletes, yeah, I've gone on them about that. Like every once in a while, they'll say something about themselves that isn't necessarily putting themselves down, and it's like, hey, like catch yourself, because if you're doing that, when you're describing to me how your week or your last 2 weeks have gone, chances are you're probably, kind of getting on yourself in a pretty negative way in the privacy of your own head, right? So that is important. And yeah, and I think about it. So again, with the weightlifting thing, we don't even think about it no more. We just kind of do it, But when it comes to other things, I think that's the hat I have to put on when it comes to, kind of putting myself in the same shoes as my athletes. Because there is a lot of self-talk. Like when there's some habit I'm trying to break, something I'm trying to get started with, there's like, oh, come on, Bert, let's go. Let's do this. You said you do this time. But I guess I couldn't imagine me getting the best out of myself with any form of negative self-talk. I don't do that with me, at all, ever. And I don't see how that would not work on, I've learned this, right, with we'll just say people in circles close to you who you're not trying to manipulate their behavior, but you're trying to get the desired results. It's like, hey, can you clean up after yourself? Hey, can you do this? Hey, that sort of deal, right? It's like the positive reinforcement works so well. It's like, yo, I noticed you did this. Congrats. You clap them up, right? And it's got to be genuine. And the same thing with yourself, right? It's like the opposite I know works really well with me. After I did that thing that I didn't want to do, it's like, yo, clap it up, Bert. And actually, no, my training, this was me during the lockdown, because my training was, I definitely put me in the shoes of people who are just getting rolling with it, because I was training in my bedroom. It was a 40-pound kettlebell. That's all I had. And there was a lot of talk to get myself to do that. And if you would have been in here and seen me train, I looked like a madman, because it had like that football spirit. It's like after every set, it was like, yeah, baby, let's do this, and usually I'm not vocal in that way to myself, but I'm like, hey, no one's here. Sound doesn't travel very well in this house anyways. We're going to have a good time, and we're going to, we're going to celebrate all the little victories. So, when it comes to negative talk, self-talk, that can be so devastating. But just as much on the other side, it's like the clapping yourself up. That is so important. And I just thought about this. I've seen that work with other folks. Like my brother used to annoy me with something as a kid. I'd use that approach. I'm like, yo, bro, thank you very much for, you're really good at this, blah, blah, blah. And the same thing with myself is after I got done with my little lockdown session here, afterwards, I'm like, hell yeah, Bert, let's go have a fucking smoothie. You did great, and it does matter. It's so crazy, but it does matter.
Yeah. And like Bert, I negative self-talk for me, it doesn't really exist. You know what I mean? At least not when it comes to my weight training. So I'm not gonna say it doesn't exist, because it exists in other things, but at least for my weight training, it doesn't. And really what kind of set that tone, way back, I made this little YouTube series that we've now got as a free course on the vault called increasing your strength while dropping weight, or gaining strength while dropping weight. I can't remember exactly what it is. I should, but anyway, the very first thing right on top was, you don't tell yourself that you're losing strength while you're dropping. You don't tell yourself that, you're weaker now. You just, those words don't come into your mouth. That's all a matter of mindset. Because as soon as you tell yourself that, it's kind of like you guys were talking about, it becomes reality. You know what I mean? You speak those words, now that's actually it's out there, you know? And so it's going to become reality, you know? I remember I used to all the time, using visualization, I remember the dumbbells, the 90-pound dumbbells, pressing those over my head was always kind of my nemesis. You know what I mean? That was my, my whatever that anti-Optimus Prime is. I can't remember his name right now, but I would visualize myself getting those dumbbells up over my head and then doing a rep. And then I would just tell myself, okay, it's already happened. Now I just got to make it a reality. You know what I mean? And so I have to, a lot of times, I just had to do this here recently with a client. He got every check-in. Yeah, I just feeling weaker. You know, I'm feeling weaker and feeling weaker. And finally, I just had to kind of put my foot down. And, you know, luckily with this particular client, I can kind of get that football type of motivation where you just kind of grab their face mask and you kind of get in their face, you know what I mean? But in kind of a more of a loving way, you just got to kind of say, look, I don't want to hear those words out of your mouth again. I don't want to hear you start a check-in with those words, and I don't want to hear those words, because he always does vlogs. I don't want to hear those words coming out of your mouth anymore. And he really appreciated that. This particular client was just like, you know what, you're absolutely right. That's it, done. I'm not talking about that anymore. And ever since then, things have gone really well. Weight's coming off, very beneficial diet breaks, training has gone very well. And so it's not exactly what you were talking about, Steve, with positive self-talk, but more so the detriment of negative self-talk, you know what I mean? And really just not even letting that be a part of your repertoire.
As you say that, I had kind of two things that popped into my head. I don't know if I would put these as self-talk. It's almost like thinking habits or something, but like I heard this a long time ago, and like I found it to be true in most things. It's like when we don't want to do something, we like break it down into all these little bitty pieces. Like if we don't feel like going to the gym, we're like, I got to go change my clothes, get my keys, get in the car, back out of the driveway. Like we break it down. And I was talking with a client, and he was just like, man, I'm having a really hard time getting through these workouts. And I was like, okay. I was like, what are you thinking about? And it was basically like, he was constantly thinking about like, how much, like before he even got to the gym, it would be like, this is going to take me 2 hours. This is going to take me an hour. This is going to take me an hour and a half. Like versus like just focusing on like the next rep or the next set or like the next X. It's just like I think about my training. I just go like rep by rep by rep by set by set by set. And like, I'm done. So it's like, I don't enter the gym with like, all right, well, it's 2:00 now. I won't be out of here until 4. Or it's like, that was kind of his mindset. It was like, I don't know. He just like was already thinking about how all the negatives and how long this thing was going to take and blah, 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 versus just going like, I almost like flopped what I was talking about initially there. I started with something else. I ended up crossing in the middle. Hopefully that makes sense. A totally different thought. I don't know. The other thing, and then I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, is like when I'm training and it's a tough set, I just kind of double down on my technique focus. So it's like, I'll just kind of, instead of thinking about like the weight on the bar or like even how many reps I have left, it'll be like, you know, like knees out or like brace or like deep breath, or like I'll just get super focused on my technique. This way I'm not as focused on like maybe the pain in the moment, like the good pain, or like how bad it feels or how much I have left or how heavy it is. I try to just like double down my thinking on like my technique, and that kind of takes my focus away from the pain in the moment.
Yeah, you almost have to. You know, the higher those RPEs get and the closer that you get to failure, usually the more it hurts. And you almost have to break down every rep into little phases of technique. You know what I mean? I find that a lot. Like if I'm doing an RPE, 9, where it's like, okay, this is something I can do for 2. But this first one's not going to be easy. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you got to right from unracking the bar. If it's a bench, got to get my tops of my shoulders pinned. Step 1. Number 2, got to get the arch in the back. Number 3, got to get the feet set. Number 4, got to get the big breath in. You've got to break it down that way. And you're right. It absolutely does, kind of take away from the pain. And sometimes I'll actually surprise myself. You know what I mean? There's something I got to get for an RPE 9, a single. And guess what? Because I broke it down that way, it actually was more like an RPE 8. I probably could have got that for 3. You know what I mean? But yeah, it kind of gets back to what you were talking about before, Steve. Is you got to have that tunnel vision at certain points. You know what I mean? I mean, does a basketball player think about scoring 101 points? You know what? No. Their immediate thinking is like, I got to get this ball inbound. You know what I mean? Or I got to get the tip. You know, my son the same way. When he's on the field, you know, he's not thinking about winning the game. He's thinking about, okay, as soon as that ball moves, you know, my hands are snapping back and I'm getting ready and into position. You've got to break things down. Which, you know, it almost kind of breaks down into not only these short time periods, but also long time periods like Berto was talking about earlier of it's kind of ending with your goal and working your way back and setting up these little mini checkpoints, you know. It's like that, but we're talking like seconds and milliseconds, right?
And, you know, just like you said, Steve, about the whole, like, hey, you know getting dressed, keys, this, that. You can, even if you do look at it that way, like every little step you can see is a little win, you know. I know for me, like, you know, back to my lockdown training sessions here, especially the Bulgarian split squats, it was like, oh, you know, it was like, all right, let's get this done. And then we get it done. And then we'd be, you know, all happy and celebrating that, you know. So yeah, you can look at it just as much in that same way. It's like, yeah, there's just all these things you have to do. But, you know, it's like, hey, after you get it done, it's like, hype yourself up, because we forget how much power we do have over that. We are our greatest influence at the end, right?